Okay, so while we are going to be a little bit more specific with our summative assessments and use them sparingly, we are going to instead shift our focus to our formative assessments. This is where the fun happens. This is where we can see the students learning. We need to be doing this all along the way, from the beginning to the end. We shouldn't just be giving content to students, input, and then assessing them summatively. We need to be doing the formative assessments as we go. When we're doing distance learning and looking digitally, I've given a few examples here, and it's not so you start using all of them, but if you find something that calls to you, add it to your Wakelet collection. Try it out. So some ongoing formative assessment ideas. Word clouds, you may be familiar with those, where you can take a reading and see how many times a word appears. But what about this? What about you say something? What do you think of when you hear about World War II? What comes to mind? And so you can start off a unit or a lesson by kind of getting the prior knowledge of the students and seeing where it falls. And so there's this program called Answer Garden that I find helpful with that. I just came across that this summer, and I thought it was so cool and so easy. So if you could take a moment and before you go to the next slide, you can go into this Answer Garden and try it out. So when you hear assessments and distance learning, what do you think of? I think of my friend Google, and I just click submit. And then I think of cheating. And then I think of, formative. I could think of feedback, whatever it is, I start adding it in. And as other people add in words, we can start seeing which ideas have the strongest hold by which ones are larger in our word cloud. So go ahead and give that a shot here before you go on to the next slide. Before we get to the other tool, discussions and reflections, just like you would use in your regular face-to-face classes. You want to use them now. You can do discussions in your LMS. We will probably be doing Google Classroom. Google Classroom, you can do discussions and you can add them into the stream. You can require them as classwork, or you can just have them worth no points. It's up to you. But it's formative assessment. You don't necessarily need to grade it. And in fact, you want to find a way to make it useful and not punitive, okay? Not like it's going to take points off of someone. Reflections, you can use reflections, video reflections, Flipgrid, for instance. There was another one I came across, and I think I might have it coming up later on. That's similar to Flipgrid, but it gives you more multimedia options. But you can do video reflections. You can have them do quick writes. You can have them reflect on a Jamboard by filling out, putting their name, their sticky, by whatever they agree with. And that way it will give you feedback digitally in a quick manner so that you can provide feedback. Polls and surveys through Google Forms. Pear Deck, love using Pear Deck if you're doing synchronous live videos. Video Ant. Many of us are familiar with Edpuzzle, and I'm going to talk about that later as a way to get content, to communicate, have the students communicate with content. Video Ant is very similar to it. It is a way for students to go in and upload a YouTube video and annotate it themselves. You can do that in Edpuzzle. Students can technically do it, but it's much easier in Video Ant. And in fact, it's from the University of Minnesota, so we're supporting a university. It's not a for-profit. It's not a for-profit company here. But when you go into Video Ant and you sign up, you just upload a video, and then it's going to ask you if you want to annotate it. And so students were able to figure this out like nothing this year. I was going to show you, I think I have it open here. So here's one example here. We had Mythbusters. They had to choose a Mythbusters episode to watch. I had various they could pick from. And then they had to identify different parts of the experiment. And so they'd have to stop it throughout, identify problems, hypothesis, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is one way to formatively assess them to see if they were on the right track. And I could give him feedback right away from this. Let's see. Another fun program to use if you want something digital to change it up, especially if you want to use images or analogies, is something called Genially. You might be familiar with something called Banglink. Banglink is a program where you can take pictures and you can link different text multimedia options to different parts of the picture to kind of like label it. It's an interactive image is what it is. It started costing. And so Genially does not cost. It is free. And so when you're looking at Genially, and I think I have one open here, they take an image and you can collaborate on it. You can work on the same one and you can go through and label different parts. Now, on this assignment, this was a formative assessment. They had to make an analogy, typical 7th grade standard here, parts of the cell, identifying some of the functions. And so Patrick is like a lysosome. He's the waste removal being eaten. He be eating the Krabby Patties. Okay, we need to work on our grammar here, but, he communicated through text the analogy here. So this is a higher level Bloom's taxonomy here, creating the analogy between the two. And I could see if he was on the right track or not. You can also insert, I believe, video and audio in this as well. So that's another program that you might find useful here. If you end up doing 100% remote teaching, if you're working with Canvas, they have mastery paths. Mastery paths are wonderful for formative assessment, and you can really create an individual learning plan based on how well students do. If they're proficient in one test, they can go on to another, or if they're not, then they can maybe go into remediation. Google has something similar. It's called branching forms. So in Google Forms, and this would be a different PD, or you can email me if you're interested in this or talk to Team DLS, you can create branches where, depending on how students answer a question, they are taken to one question, option A, or a second question, option B, or even a third question. And that way, those that are getting them correct can proceed on. Those that are getting the answers incorrect maybe have a little bit of remediation. Maybe they watch a video in the next question before going on, for instance. And so that is a really good formative assessment tool that can be done in distance learning. And what's cool about this is it's self-paced at the student's level when the student can do it. Again, contact Team DLS or contact me, Erica Shannon, if it's something that you might be interested in incorporating but would like some more help with how to go about setting one up. Students love to draw, love to draw, right? They're always doodling. I teach middle school right now, and they have introduced me to Brush Ninja. I knew nothing about this, but we were talking about, we do what's called brain dumps. And brain dumps are when they just kind of show me what they know about a topic. They have to include like 8 vocabulary terms, and they have to connect them somehow. It's usually towards the end, more towards the end of our unit. It's not a summative yet, but they've learned enough vocabulary that they should be able to start connecting them, not just defining them, but connecting them. And so I asked them to choose some kind of mode to present it, a story, a comic, something to show the relationships. And there's a rubric that goes with it. But the kids showed me Brush Ninja this year. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I'm not very familiar with it, but I bet if you ask students, they can show you this. I think I have one open here. Here is an example of a brain dump. We were talking about continental drift. And so basically it's a animated drawing. It's a way to make an animated drawing that's not very hard. So here we have our plates, our continents moving apart. We have another person that did a little comic back and forth talking about what plate tectonics were. And so this is just a tool that you can use for those that are a little bit more visual when it comes to expressing themselves. I had one student who didn't do anything when it came to reading, answering multiple choice, answering short answer, answering essays. But if it was a drawing application, he rocked it out. So, you all have those learners, and you need to know who your learners are. So that way you can offer these options to those specific learners. So that's another way to formatively assess students. And then again, whiteboarding, kind of like summative assessment, but you would just use it as a low stakes assessment with formative and give feedback with it using Kami or Jamboard. Those are my 2 favorite options right now with our Chromebooks. If you do want to use quizzes, you can do the self-graded. This is the time to do those multiple choice ones. Let Google take care of grading it for you, okay? Low stakes. That's the key, though, with quizzes. Low stakes. Gamified versions are also another way to go. I'm not a big fan of Kahoot. I feel like students are burnt out on it. There is one way I like Kahoot, and I'll show you that later on. But quizzes and GimKits, and I just spelled that wrong. I see that there. I'll fix that. Quizzes and GimKits are two that I kind of are going to right now, as I assign them as homework. GimKits, they get to like throw different problems at people. They get to like freeze people from answering. And so it gets really competitive. They get money and they can spend their money. It's kind of cool. And that was actually designed by students. The other one, quizzes, you are probably a little bit more familiar with. But what's cool is that either case, they give you nice reports. So like my students, I assign this as homework. I'm not there with them. They do it during the week. But I can see then for our quick teach the following week, what areas we need to work on. So what questions do we need to work on? Okay, so most of these they did pretty well on. This must have been an assessment towards the end. But maybe right here, it looks like a vocabulary one, knowing homo versus hetero, maybe. And maybe kind of fleshing out what dominant and recessive means. But I can use these results, not actually be part of the actual quiz taking process. Oops. And then, if you do quizzes, one way to really up your game is have students take the quiz and then reflect on it. Okay, let them assess how they did before they actually get the results back. Let them give feedback. Maybe it's just in the form of a flip grid. Maybe it's in the form of they guess which ones they got wrong. So that's just something that way they can take it to the next level. It's not just like, okay, I'm done with it. I'm not going to think about it again. It gives them time to process it, and it gives them time to think about their own learning.